Good morning, everyone at Catch the Fire Toronto East.
Good morning, church.
So glad you're tuning in to check us out and to participate. That's why we're bringing the word to you today, as per usual. And I want to talk to us about the God's jealous love for us. God's jealous love for us. Whenever Elsie and I get into a heated discussion or an argument, one of the things that I end up saying along the way in the argument is, why can't we just discuss the ideas? Why can't we just put the ideas that we're conflicted about, that we're in disagreement about, why can't we just put those out on the table and objectively deal with those ideas? That's kind of my frame of reference, and how in the middle of the argument along the way somewhere, that's what I'm going to come up with, right? Because I'm coming up with that in response to the fact that Elsie is, in my mind anyway, bringing everything, her emotions into it. I often say, why are you making it so personal, right? Is that kind of...
That's very true. Very true.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so why am I bringing this up? Why am I bringing this up? By the way, when I talk about you bringing your emotions into it, I'm overlooking the fact that I also bring my emotions into it, and they're generally emotions that have to do with anger. So but why am I bringing this up? Why am I bringing this particular situation up to our attention? And what does it have to do with the God's jealous love for us? Well, hopefully you'll see the link I'm trying to make in a minute or two. You see, I grew up in a culture where this idea existed that men were the rational, logical, analytical ones, and women were the emotional, unstable ones. And that emotions were fickle and unreliable. It's logic and rationality that was actually solid. Right? And by the way, this isn't just my personal culture that I grew up in. This is part of the world system, actually.
That's very true.
Right? In fact, that's why back in the day, for the longest while, women were not allowed to give testimony in court because they were quote unquote hysterical and you couldn't rely on their testimony. God forgive us.
That's not the culture of the kingdom.
That's not a culture of the kingdom. That's what existed in the world, in many parts of the world, including the Old Testament culture as well. Where did this idea come from? Well, the short answer is that it came from sin.
That's a good answer.
When Adam and Eve fell, like everything else, when Adam and Eve fell, this became part of the fall, and God, that enmity that exists between the sexes, between men and women, that's what God predicted would happen as part of the fall, right? So in a general sense, and not to be trite, but sin is at the core of the root of that problem, where we have this false understanding of who we are. But I also want to suggest that another cause for this idea being so pervasive in the culture, especially in the Western culture, back in the day, it's obviously somewhat different now, but back in the day, this was very prevalent, where men were solid and rational and women were emotional. I think it's rooted in our view of God in the church. And of course, back in those days, the church had a big influence on the culture. And what they were saying is that I think they were making an incorrect overemphasis on certain attributes of God. There's a doctrine of impassibility, which simply means that God is without passions, impassibility. There's a God is without passions, meaning that he's not touched, he's not impacted by what's happening in the world. There's no emotions that are stirred up in him, when he looks at the world, looks at people and what's happening in the world. There's a related idea called the doctrine of immutability, which means God is unmoved, unchanged by what's happening in the world. And I totally get where they're coming from, because they want to make it solid that God is, he never changes. He's yesterday, today, forever the same. And I understand that whole idea, but I believe that it became an overemphasis on that aspect of God, and a de-emphasis on the fact that God does have emotions. Listen, everybody, you cannot read the Bible, Old Testament, New Testament, you cannot read the Bible without coming to grips with the fact that God is a God full of emotions. Full of emotions. And of course, because he is God, he's perfect in every way, and he's able to be intensely emotional and also brilliantly rational at the same time. And there's no conflict between the two things. The conflict exists in us because we're fallen, and even individually we have our own brokenness between our own personal mental capacities and our emotions, and not to mention between each other, right? Yeah. But God, perfect as he is, he's able to be both rational and brilliant, but also full of emotion, and with intensity of emotion. And I'm going to emphasize the intensity of his emotions today, because that's where we want to go with this. I want us to get in touch with the jealous love of God. And God has a jealous love for us. Yes, we know the gospel. We know that God died for us. God so loved the world, he gave his only begotten Son, that whoever believes in him should not perish. And of course, it says in Romans 5:8, God demonstrates his love for us, and while we were yet sinners, Christ died for us. So yeah, we understand those verses. But the danger is that we can read those verses and hear those verses without being conscious of the fact that behind those words there is emotion, and there's fiery passion in the heart of God for us. This all came, those of you who know me know that I talk about these things from time to time, but it came back in a fresh new way to me just these last few days, as I came across this new song by Lauren Daigle. Lauren Daigle is her name. I'm just going to read it. The song is called Tremble, and I'm just going to read one verse. The whole thing makes an impact on me, and in fact some of it has wrecked me. But I'm just going to read this verse in the song. You invented all of time and space, called the morning and midnight into place, made the mountains and tamed the wildest seas, and still you set your holy eyes on me. And here's the line: I will always live in wonder of the fact that I awaken your jealous love. Eternity will almost be enough. Eternity will almost be enough. I will always live in wonder of the fact that I awake your jealous love. And that line really stirred in my heart, and in my heart and in my mind over the last few days, as I've been listening to this song on repeat, and then just meditating on this brilliant, brilliant poetic language that brings out so much rich biblical truth. And of course, that's why I value it, because this isn't just nice words. These words are based, everybody, in the biblical revelation of who God is and how he relates to us. for crying out loud. He's the God who is immense and all-powerful, invisible, immortal, glorious, only wise God. He's the God who made everything. And yet it says that he sets his holy eyes on us. And I love the fact that she uses, or the writers use this language. He's set. He's not just giving me a passing glance, right? He's not just averting his gaze after a passing glance. He's actually got his eyes set on me with great intensity. Everybody, I'm reminded that when Elsie and I first began to hang out together, and of course, you know, it was the time of the renewal, so we spent a lot of time at the airport church, and the meetings would go late into the night, and then I would feel obligated to drive her home, which was actually my joy, to be honest. But I would drive her home, and I remember that on more than one occasion, as I'm driving the car and we're having conversation, and I ended up staring intensely and intentionally and longingly and a long time.
Keep your eyes on the road.
Yes, we had a couple of moments when we had to pull the car
Aww,
back
that's so
on
lovely.
track. I was setting my holy eyes on her.
You were setting your eyes wholly on me.
Yeah. Yes, that's what God does, everybody. He sets his eyes on us with great intensity and great longing. And of course it says that I will always live in wonder. And she says, I'll spend the rest of my life here. I'm saying this, I'll spend the rest of my life here and then there in awe-filled wonder that you would find something in me that is attractive enough to arouse your jealous love. Eternity will almost be enough. That reminds me of another ancient hymn, older hymn, when we've been there 10,000 years, bright shining as the sun, we'll have no less days to sing his praise than when we first begun. Eternity will almost be enough to begin to grasp the immense, awesome, wonderful reality of God who created the entire universe, flung the stars into space, who was massive beyond our comprehension, and yet he deliberately, in everything in this world, he deliberately sets his eyes on you and on me. And there's something in us, something in you, something in me that draws his attention to us and awakens his jealous love for us. Isn't that incredible?
Wow.
To think about? Just meditate on that and let that reality hit our hearts. You know, it's interesting that in the Bible, the word jealous is used in both a good way, but also in a bad way, right? Jealous. When it refers to us humans, it's generally bad.
Yes.
Because our jealousy leads to sin and bad decisions. Mm-hmm. But when it's referred to, when the word jealous or jealousy is used in relationship to God, it's always a good thing because it's referring to his desire for exclusive relationship with us.
That's beautiful.
In it. Mm-hmm. You know, as I meditated on this, I looked up in the dictionary and also in Bible dictionaries. And in the Bible, one of the definitions in the Old Testament for the word that's used in Hebrew that we translate jealous or jealousy is God is focusing his desire for exclusive relationship. That's what makes him jealous. Mm-hmm. He wants exclusive relationship with us. So even when he was giving the 10 Commandments, on more than one occasion he mentions this, starting in Exodus 34:14, For example, it says, "Do not worship any other god, do not worship any other god, for the Lord, whose name is jealous, is a jealous God." The Bible isn't just saying that's jealousy is just one attribute of God. It's actually giving that name. God's name is jealous, right? Which means that He has intensity and He has a desire for exclusive relationship with us.
Beautiful.
Deuteronomy 4:24 says, "For the Lord your God is a consuming fire, a jealous God." So jealousy is not a bland word, everybody. Jealousy has intensity to it, okay? In fact, in the New Testament, the word is zilu. The Greek word is zilu, where we get the word zealous in English. It's also the word jealous in English. Same word. And the Greek New Testament Bible dictionary says to desire, eagerly desire, show zeal, feel an attitude or emotion of deep concern, to be jealous, envious, to experience so on and so forth. Negative, eagerly desire, zealous, covet. These are the words that are used as synonyms to describe this word jealous. There's emotional intensity in this word.
There's nothing passive.
There's nothing passive about God's jealous love for us. I also discovered this interesting thing by a journalist, a woman who teaches journalism. Her name is Meryl Perlman. Anyway, so she brought this very interesting thing that actually helped me, because she was making a distinction between the word jealous and the word envy. Jealousy and envy. And of course, in common usage, many people use those two words interchangeably. And of course, that's all possible. But what she was saying is that technically there is a distinction between the two, and here is the distinction she's making. I'm just going to read what she says. Jealousy and envy have very similar meanings and are often confused. In many ways, the difference is whether you have some claim on the object of your desire. Jealous is defined as very watchful or careful in guarding or keeping. Envy is defined as a feeling of discontent and ill will because of another's advantage. In other words, the distinction between jealousy and envy is simply this: I can be jealous of something if I have ownership of that thing, whereas envy is being covetous.
Yeah.
What's the word?
Yeah. Coveting somebody
else's property. That's what envy is. So let me give you an illustration. Cayenne has a nice hat.
He has a few nice hats.
A nice hat, okay? And so I cannot say I am jealous of Cayenne's hat.
Right.
Why? Because it's not mine. Unless, of course, Cayenne stole the hat from me and now he's wearing it. No, it's his hat. And so I can't be jealous. I can be envious.
Yes. Very good distinction.
I hope that's helpful, because here's the point I want to get to. God's love for us is not an envious love. It is a jealous love. And the reason why it's a jealous love is because He owns us. He is our creator. He is the one who has offered redemption to anyone who would receive Him. He owns us. We belong to Him, and therefore He is righteously jealous for us. Amen. We see that both in the Old Testament, when we just read that He was jealous for the people of Israel. And so there's also, because it's an emotional word, God can righteously be angry because somebody is trying, or something is trying to draw His bride away from Him. Okay? You know, in a healthy marriage, for example, in a healthy marriage, we have a fairly healthy marriage.
Yes.
Suppose if there's a lady who is flirting with me and making advances towards me, well, how would you feel?
I would want to interrupt.
Yeah,
I want to get in between.
yeah. Because you were?
I would be, I'd be very protective of you. I'd be jealous, yes.
You'd be jealous.
Yeah.
Likewise, if somebody came along and was trying to hit on you, I would have feelings of jealousy.
I'd feel sorry for them.
That's right. And that's the way, in a very, weak, microcosmic kind of a way, is the kind of jealousy that God feels for us, His people, both in the Old Testament, the Jewish people, but also for us in the New Testament. And Jesus, this whole idea of God being jealous is not just an Old Testament idea, it's also in the New Testament. God said, or Jesus said about the people of His day, some of them, He said, you are an adulterous generation.
Yeah.
Because they were chasing after rules and man-made rules and regulations, religious behavior, and not on intimate relationship with their God.
Yeah.
There was a movie, by the way, a bunch of years ago. Let me just try to paint the picture of God's love for us in terms of His jealous love. There was a movie called Taken.
Oh, yes.
The first one, they did a couple of sequels, but not anything as close to being as good as the first one. And most of you probably know the movie. It's about this man whose daughter was going on a trip to, it's an American movie. The daughter's going to Europe. She gets captured by these human traffickers. And but in this case, he says, he says on the phone to the kidnappers, he says, I don't know who you are. I don't know what you want. If you're looking for ransom, I can tell you I don't have money. But what I do have are a very particular set of skills. Skills I have acquired over a very long career. Skills that make me a nightmare for people like you. If you let my daughter go now, that will be the end of it. I will not look for you. I will not pursue you. But if you don't, I will look for you. I will find you. And I will kill you. When Elsie and I watched that movie, we came away thinking, oh my God, what an amazing prophetic picture of the ferocious, the fierce love of God for us as children. It was quite an impactful movie in that sense for us, because it was stirring in our own hearts. This is what God is like towards us. It says in Exodus 20 verse 5, you shall not bow down to them or worship them, for I, the Lord your God, am a jealous God. I am a jealous God. And the indictment against the Israelites in Deuteronomy 32, 15 to 16, they abandoned the Lord who made them and rejected the rock, their Savior. They made Him jealous with their foreign gods and angered Him with their detestable idols. In the Old Testament, in places like Isaiah and especially Hosea, the sin of Israel, running after foreign gods and marrying other women from other cultures, not because that was inherently something wrong, but because it meant that they were going to be making covenant with people who weren't following God.
Yeah.
And so he was saying that kind of sin, he referred to it as adultery. Adultery. This is the kind of relationship that God was after with the people of Israel, an exclusive relationship, one where He was the husband and they would be His bride, and rightly so, when they were breaching the contract, he became jealous because of these other gods, these other idols that were luring her away from him. Amen?
Mm-hmm. And they had also made a covenant with God. So
Yeah.
it wasn't just one-sided, but they were
Correct.
making decisions
Yeah.
and following other gods.
Yeah. And then, of course, in the New Testament, I already mentioned Jesus calling them an adulterous generation. But in the book of James, verse 5 of chapter 4, he speaks about, isn't God jealous about the Spirit he's placed in us? God is jealous. And the great apostle Paul, for example, when he was writing to the Corinthians, he says, I am jealous for you with a godly jealousy. I promised you to one husband, to Christ, so that I might present you as a pure virgin to him. I'm making all of these points simply to say this, friends, that when we experience and encounter the transformative revelation of the gospel, the good news of what God has done for us in Jesus, we will never be able to say that the grace of God gives us a license to sin or to live passive, half-hearted, lackluster lives. You know, I'm just going back to this song. I'm just meditating as I go on my walks and as I pray. Lord, what is it about me? What is it about me that you would desire me with holy, passionate, fiery, jealous love? What is it about me that you would desire me with holy, passionate, fiery, jealous love? My heart and my mind are exploding. I don't have the words or the powers of articulation to express what I'm feeling on the inside, but I stand in awe of you, Jesus. I stand in awe of what you've done. I don't even have the capacity to love you in return like you so richly deserve, and yet you love me anyway. Even when we commit adultery against you, going after false gods and idols of our own making,
Yeah.
even when we commit adultery against you, you have died for us. Wow.